Thanks so much, Anne, and thanks for inviting us back. I'm going to start us off with a short video that I hope will give you a sense of the program, and then I'll give you more of the specifics, but not too many more. Because there is a table over here with literature on it that you're welcome to take with you.
I'm Noam Rabinovich, and it is an honor to speak before you today and make my voice heard.
My name is Hannahbhushanam. With peace, allow me to begin.
In this calm and peaceful place, you see us, Israelis and Palestinians, standing together on the same stage. We're sharing our dreams for a better future, our hopes. I wish to remind us, unfortunately, that reality is not yet peaceful.
And I understood that if I want to create something else, I must not see this conflict anymore from the Israeli side or the Palestinian side, but from our side, our joint shared side.
So I decided to talk about my story, and that's why I'm here today.
Our pasts and our presents, as harsh as they may be, must not determine our futures.
And because I know we all deserve freedom, I ask you to join us, young Palestinian and Israeli leaders, in realizing our vision of freedom and peace.
While I don't want to sound too much like an Old Testament prophet, but I want to say to my American friends, you should always know you are part of the solution or part of the problem.
This future is reachable, and we should join together, Israelis, Palestinians, and Americans, to make this future closer to the present. We all came here to share with you our stories.
We have a great opportunity here. We can do something else.
So friends, let's work together, all of us. I want us to really live like neighbors, to be able to visit each other, to be able to exchange art and culture and work together.
I may be a fighter, but I do not want to experience 6 more wars by the time I'm 50.
I don't want my future kids to grow up like how I did. I want them to live in peace.
Please continue the hard work and do not give up on us.
In several days, we are all going to go our separate ways, but we are taking with us more than what we came with. We are carrying with us 10 new stories and one common story, a story of our summer here in Washington, D.C.
And in this same place, we are saying here today,
have more faith and peace.
No one is free when others are oppressed.
We are the people who shape this conflict.
We want to be representatives of a better future.
Interacting with the other side does not make you be the other side. It makes you see the other side.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. We're sorry that it took us so long to speak up, but we promise you this, we have no intention of shutting up anytime soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. That was my story.
Peace be with you. Shalom.
Shukran, Toda, and thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, I hope that the video has given you a sense of what New Story leadership means to our fellows. This was our first class, but it could just as easily have been from any of the other 7 classes that we've had here. And now I'd like to offer you some of those specifics I mentioned, specifics about our goals and our program. For the past 8 years, NSL has brought 5 Israeli and 5 Palestinian young leaders, equal numbers of men and women if we can manage it, to Washington, D.C., as Ann mentioned, for 7 weeks in June and July. Our goals are not political. I want to stress that. We don't take sides in the conflict, but rather we hope to give our fellows a platform from which to speak about the problems in their region and the hopes for the their hopes for the future, not ours, but theirs. Why here in DC, you might ask? The problem isn't here. Well, many of the decisions that affect the region are made here in Washington, often by lawmakers and other experts who don't actually know the people who live there. So we want to change that dynamic with our little program. Our fellows are 19 to 29 years old. They're university students, sometimes at the graduate level. They are Jews, Muslims, and Christians. They live in pairs with host families, if possible, 1 Israeli and 1 Palestinian per family. They spend 3 days a week at work placements on the Hill and elsewhere in DC, such as the Mosaic Theater, which has become a great friend of ours. And we also pair them in their work placements if we can, not necessarily the same pairs as in the homes. On the other 2 days a week, they receive an intensive introduction to the American story. They learn how to use the personal narrative as a tool for breaking down barriers. They attend seminars on storytelling and social entrepreneurship. Because NSL believes that conflict stems from the fact that both sides are trapped in failing stories. Sorry, you can tell I'm not used to this. We want to give our fellows the tools to create a new shared story of peace and cooperation, again, as Ann mentioned. Hence our motto, which you can see over there, change the story, change the world. Each NSL applicant must also develop and implement a project for change. This is in the application process. We require this of them to improve conditions in his or her community. As of now, there are at least 8 of these projects being run by our alums, including the one you've already heard about, Shades, which teaches negotiation skills to junior level Israeli and Palestinian diplomats. 2 others I could mention are El Barrio, a boxing gym in Ramallah that encourages children to stay off the streets and in school while teaching them athletic skills. And in fact, the founder, Nader Joyce, says that he wants to be the first person to field an Olympic gold medalist boxer out of Palestine, and he's starting on it now. And the other one I could mention is the Museum of Palestinian History and Culture, started by NSL alum Bashara Nasser, whose uncle runs the Tent of Nations, which you've probably heard of. And Bashara is currently raising funds that he needs to build a permanent home in DC. So we believe it's not enough just to talk about the problem. Our fellows need to be actively engaged in making things better. And much of our curriculum, which I had mentioned earlier, is designed to help the PFCs get off the ground and become successful. NSL has developed a program that has made a difference in the lives of many, if not all, of its 80 graduates. And we've done it almost entirely with volunteer labor and donated services. As Paul Costello, our president, often says, NSL operates in an economy of grace. That's his favorite expression, I think. Families host our fellows for the pleasure of getting to know them. Our experienced faculty donates its time and expertise, as do our work supervisors. We have no paid staff, just interns from AU and other area universities who work long hours with no recompense except the chance to make lasting friendships with our wonderful fellows and the satisfaction of helping to deliver a successful program. But we can't do this forever. We need to become a financially stable and sustainable organization, and for that we need your help. One exciting possibility that I've sort of bounced around with Ann is the possibility for churches like St. John's to pair up with one another or with a synagogue or mosque to support one student. And we'd like to further enhance the connection between St. John's and NSL by arranging for congregants from St. John's who visit the Holy Land to meet with our alums who live there, and to get their story of how they are trying to make a difference. So now you're going to hear from Anna and Hala, both from NSL's class of 2016. Hala, I have to brag, she was my host daughter, so I have to mention that. And they will explain in detail how you can help NSL continue its important work. So thank you.
Is that on? No, we can leave it. No, you can leave it.
I don't know. Okay.
Sure. This on? Okay, yeah.
So first of all, we would like to thank you for coming and coming to listen to us. It means a lot because, you know, listening to an Israeli and Palestinian talk about the conflict, it's special to us, and we really appreciate that you take the time to listen to it because, you know, not everyone does that. So.
Yeah, and believe us, you can help. Good morning, everyone. My name is Hala. I was born and raised in the West Bank in Nablus City. I want to walk you through my experience living back in the region. So I have witnessed the first Intifada that was back in the 80s. And I remember very well when I was 4 years old, and my mom was pregnant with my little sister. So, you know, she will need an ambulance, and due to the closure and curfews, we couldn't reach an ambulance in a short period of time. So my father had to risk his life and my mom's life to drive her to the hospital. That was a memory that I can never forget. I also have witnessed the second Intifada, but I have a long list of memories that if I'm gonna speak about, I need another event. So I had the opportunity to educate myself, and I took my career very seriously. I have a master's degree in finance from Lancaster University in England. I have taught at one of the biggest universities in the Middle East for 5 years. And seeing the generation, the new generation, being frustrated is even more painful to me than thinking about my childhood and adulthood back in the region. So my students were usually absent from my classes due to closures or checkpoints, and we're going to show you how checkpoints look like now. They usually missed exams before they were shut, or they usually missed a whole semester because they were in jail. So seeing all of this was painful to me, and I thought I have to step up and talk for my community and represent our rights, or talk about our rights and make our voices heard. So my journey is long, and it started a long time ago. Even back then when I was teaching, I used to speak and discuss politics with my students, trying to find solutions to what's going on. We sometimes stop the whole class to mourn a student's death. So after that, and over the years, I participated in different programs for conflict resolution, but none of them were as fruitful as I thought it will be. And this was due to the obstacles we had to go through as Palestinians and Israelis. The obstacles were mainly about that we can't see each other or visit each other because we both need permits to go to other regions. And this permit takes like a long time to be issued. So as you see, this is the separation wall between the Israeli side and the Palestinian side, which is the 48 borders or line. And you want to show the next one, Anna? You see, this is the checkpoint. So usually my students are stuck here, and they can't come to the exams or the classes. Okay, here you see the signs. For these signs, the red signs are on the entrance of the Palestinian cities. It says that Israelis are not allowed to go in these areas because it's dangerous for them. So once they see these signs, they will not like think about going there.
And also this.
Okay, these are the settlements. So the settlements are not on the 48 borders, but on the 67. So they are spread all over the West Bank. So you can see behind there are like Palestinian cities, and here are the settlements. So some roads are like, we use the same roads, but some roads we can't go to, it's only for settlers. But they live within the Palestinian side. If you want to show the map, we can explain more.
The map.
Okay, so this is the map. I'm sure most of you are familiar with it. So the wall or the fence is the red line, as you see. It separates the Israeli side from the Palestinian, which is, as I said, the 48 line. And the settlements are spread all over the West Bank. So this makes more trouble for Palestinians to move around. There is no freedom of movement. If there is like an attack or any closure, we can't go to our work or our schools easily.
Okay. I mean, not okay, but. Okay. So let me share my story. So my name is Anna. I'm from Israel. I'm originally from Haifa, which we'll show you the map again later. But so my family is originally from the Soviet Union, and we moved to Israel in '93. So I was 2 years old, and we moved to Israel. And my story probably kind of familiar to you because this is a country of immigrants, and Israel is a country of immigrants, slightly younger, but you know. And the thing with immigration, it's always complicated, and as an immigrant, you're always a second-class citizen to some extent, maybe not officially, but people will look at you differently. It's not only the language, it's the fact you come from a different place. And so I came when I was 2 years old, so I had this privilege of growing up and knowing Hebrew and speaking Hebrew perfectly, and I didn't really have a lot of Russian friends, or I didn't do anything that is Russian, but I was always on the edge of someone saying something really mean to me. So I was kind of in between. So I guess I had it better than other people, but still it was difficult. But I participated in all required activities as a citizen. So going to school, going to the army, university, work, everything. So a pretty standard list apart from the army service. So in Israel, every single person when they're 18 or 19, sorry, I got distracted. So Israelis, when they're 18 or 19, they enlist in the army, and it's mandatory. And the thing with the army is that Israelis like to say that to some extent, it is a positive experience because they learn a lot of skills, right? You're away from home, you learn how to do new things. It really depends on what you're doing. So not everyone goes to combat, and people see it as kind of like a professional growth experience. But you know, so someone suffers from it. So Israelis say, oh, it was, you know, interesting, I learned a lot, I'm a grown-up now, but it does something not only to you, but to the people. So the reason you're going to the army is that Israel is occupying a land, right? So it means more than Israelis admit. And the thing with the army is that, so I want to show so these are Israeli soldiers in Palestine, and these are Palestinian kids. So they see soldiers all the time. But in Israel, we also see soldiers all the time, you know, when they go home. And it's seeing soldiers all the time does something to your perception of reality. So it's a really important thing to say. And I wish I could say to you that, you know, during the army service, for me, something clicked, right? And I was like, oh my God, what am I doing? It wasn't like that at all. So before army service, I was very active in like peace organizations. And I was very active after. But that's the crazy thing about this. You do something, you know you're doing something wrong, but it's just part of your life. You don't really open your eyes. But after the army, maybe I dove into this a little bit more, into this whole peace work. And I realized another thing. I realized that I never lived under occupation because I'm not a Palestinian, but I experienced oppression being a woman, right? So in Israel, we like to say, oh my God, we're so advanced, like women serve in the army. Yeah, women serve in the army and even in combat, but the people who make the decision are men. So go to the next slide. Right? So, and it seems like the occupation and gender inequality is totally unrelated. But for me, it's the same thing. You think that you're better than someone else just because something, right? And it's just not true, and it's disgusting, and I hate it.
Yeah, so.
And it leads to the point that I realized that I don't want anyone to feel this way ever again. And I know that I can't change all oppressions, right? But if I fight for gender equality, I fight for Palestinians to have a country, a nation, a state. I fight for all other oppressions the same way I fight for this specific one.
So why we joined NSL? So NSL gave us the chance to experience something different. It brought us here together. We go on the same route, we take same buses, we are under the same laws for the first time. And this is something big for Palestinians, to be equal with the Israelis. So before coming to DC, we knew that for 7 weeks, as Joyce mentioned, we're gonna stay with the host family. And we were so excited, but at the same time, we were like, who are these people? Is it going to work out? But actually, when someone opened their houses and hearts for you, that was something very admirable and was a great experience for us.
Also, we want to tell you a little bit about our day-to-day life. So apart from living in a host family, we also, it wasn't an internship, it was kind of a work placement, but me and Hala, we worked on the Hill. So she worked for Polis and I worked for Van Hollen. Yay! So he won. So I'm happy. But and working on the Hill was amazing because we got to see something we never experienced before. So I was active in politics back in Israel. I guess you were to some extent active too, but it's completely different.
Yeah.
So
I work with Jared Polis. He's the congressman of Colorado State. And I was amazed with the level of democracy that people enjoy here. So I remember that one day when a 13-year-old kid came to his office, she sat down and she's like, tell me about your achievements. What are your future plans? I was like, wow, we didn't get the chance to do that back home. I am, as a university educator, I couldn't sit an appointment with the president of the university that easily. So that was mind-blowing seeing that.
Yeah, it is mind-blowing, but I also had not a very positive experience. So I went to a hearing of the Foreign Affairs Committee, and the title, the topic was terrorism in the West Bank. So you see, before they come to the meeting, they already know what will be the conclusion. And then someone told me, I don't remember who, but someone told me that actually they changed the topic a day before. The topic was supposed to be the situation in the Middle East, right? Completely different thing. So the people who are supposed to decide your future, our future, everyone's future, don't know what they're talking about, and they don't even have a conversation. They come with a conclusion, which is very dangerous.
Yeah, I agree. It happens all the time. It's horrible. But it didn't take away my positive experience. And I remember one day we were shadowing the congressman, and he was asking me about my opinion on how to solve the conflict. So asking me this while an Israeli guy is standing by me was amazing. I couldn't believe it. I remember also the same,
Yeah, so also during the program, we didn't just work. We had a lot of sessions for us, just for us. So like workshops, things. Actually, sorry, I didn't say anything about that. That is Senator Blumenthal's office. So and this woman there, she's the foreign affairs, I don't know, like the aide, I don't know. Yeah. So we talked to her about the Middle East. Pretty cool. So anyway, I was saying, so also during NSL, we have a lot of sessions just for us. And as you probably imagine, the conversations are pretty intense. And I remember this one time when one of the Palestinians, Mustafa, got up and he was like, okay, yeah, stop talking. I want to show you a video, right? And then we were kind of scared, right? Because what video he can show us. It's really scary what's going on back there. But actually I realized after a moment that the fact that he's willing to share something like that means a lot, because it's not throwing in our faces something like, oh my God, look what you're doing, take a look at that. But it's kind of sharing an experience, and you don't do something like that with people you don't trust. So it meant a lot to me and to everyone.
I remember that day very well, and on the same night, I went home with Daniel, who was the Israeli guy who was living in the same house with me. So, with Joyce, yeah. So we were discussing the quality of life in Gaza and West Bank, and Daniel got emotional and he started crying. And I'm like, what? Israelis have feelings? So because all the perception I have about Israelis like being cold and cruel. So with one act, all my perception has changed about the Israelis.
Yeah, so the fact that we're standing here together, I keep mentioning it. I keep saying something about that because it is very special. I think people don't realize how incredible it is that Israelis and Palestinians work together, meet each other, because we never meet each other in the region. When I was trying to calculate how much time it takes to go from Haifa to Nablus, just to kind of give you some perception of like the area, Google wouldn't even calculate a route for me, because you just don't do it. Yes. So people, what's that? Oh, whoa, that's cool. Okay, so that's Haifa and that's Nablus, but it's really close. It's like 2.5 hours in a car. So how many miles is that? I'm not sure. I'm still on the metric system. I apologize. But it's not too far. That's what I'm trying to say. But there's you just don't do it. Like Israelis don't go to Nablus and Palestinians don't go to Haifa. And we had to travel to DC to meet each other. It's crazy. And we're here not only to tell you our story, but to kind of explain how important NSL is and the fact that we want to continue working with NSL, and we want to make it an organization that is sustainable, not something that happens only during the summer, which is amazing. We'll keep doing that. But we want to keep working during the year, talk to representatives, talk to you, talk to high school kids. But we need resources for that. So
yeah, circumstances, excuse me, brought us here together. And me and Anna are planning to start an organization and take NSL to the next level. So an organization has a permanent staff, it has a budget, because we don't want it just to be like a nice summer. We want it to be serious because it's about our life, it's about our future, and we want to build that future together.
Yes, so the help we need from you or from anyone who's interested in helping us is, so we need three things: work placements, host families, and donations. Work placements means that if you have any connections with people who might be interested in having interns from NSL, which are grown-ups, professionals, please let us know. It doesn't have to be on the Hill. It was just an example. We also work in other places. Host families. If you're willing to host one person or two people, that is amazing. Think about that. And then obviously donations. So we hate asking for money, but we're from the Middle East, so we have no shame. So we will ask for money because at this point we're putting a lot of efforts into that, but no one is getting paid, and it's hard. DC is expensive. And in general, people should be paid for their hard work. So.
Yeah, maybe you walked into the room today to be a listener, which is admirable, but because not everyone makes this choice, obviously. But you can walk out of the room being an activist, a dreamer, a supporter. But one day you will say, I was part of solving this problem by encouraging the young generation to take the lead. So thank you so much.
And to our favorite part, questions.
Yes, we're going to do questions. Joyce is going to say one word about, I hope.
Yes. Short. I'm going to say two words. One is, in addition to work placements, host families, and donations, if anyone from St. John's would be interested in being on our board, we would love to have a representative from this congregation. And apropos of that, we have a stakeholders meeting, which I should mention to you, on November 11th at the Seekers Church in Tacoma Park. Anyone who has that kind of interest in helping us sustain the organization is welcome. Come to me afterwards. I'll tell you when and where. And the second thing I want to make clear, because it's not always clear, is that the organization that Hala is talking about is in fact NSL. She's just talking about making it a better organization, not a separate one, but an effort really by the alums to improve us.
Okay, so Bill and I can take questions if anyone.
Yeah, just a question. Where do you, when you get back home, say, to Israel and Palestine, I mean, what activities, what do you do together to continue to foster this operation, I guess? I mean, here you're here for 7 weeks, and then you get home, and then what happens? So, because you said in your presentation that it is somewhat difficult to get together. But, what do you do presently, and where do you see the future?
Mm-hmm. So it's a very good question, because as I said, it's really hard to get together, and I will not sugarcoat it. Like we don't really get together as much when we go back. However, I have to say that people are less scared to visit each other. So I said people don't visit each other, but it's not like it's against the law. I mean, you can technically do that, but like no one does it. So people are less afraid to do something like that. And then also they find ways to meet each other. But I think the most important thing, they share that experience with their friends and families, and kind of widen the circle. So even if I don't speak to Palestinians that much, I mean as much as I would like to, I talk to Israelis, and that's huge. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. So as I mentioned before, I was in different programs, and one of them we had to do internship in Israel, but due to the war in Gaza, it was canceled. We did it online eventually. We tried to set some meetings with the Israelis, but also it didn't work. But as Anna said, we usually do that. Like, we connect with the Palestinians. As a Palestinian, I connect with them. I show them that we have different ways maybe to solve this conflict and communicate with the other side. So, because we can't meet them, so we work in our communities. Yeah.
I'd like to ask you a question. How do you monitor the projects of the people who spend the 7 weeks here? So they go to the communities. Do you have a, like a system how to see, if they profited and what they do for their communities or not? It's just you lose track of. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
This is not something on our I want to make it really clear, one of the things that we can't do because we don't have the money is give money to these projects. We encourage our fellows while they're here, but once they go back and start their projects, they're on their own, so there's no fiduciary responsibility between us and them. And the only way that we can monitor them is that for those of us who go back to visit, and that's mostly Paul Costello, who is very sorry not to be here today, well, he's really the founder, I'm the and he's the president. He goes to the region, and when he goes, he makes a point of visiting every one of these projects that he can get to. And he's in constant email communication. So the monitoring isn't formal, it's more informal.
So I think one of the logistical problems that you're talking about is when you go back, it's really difficult for Palestinians to, say, get to a meeting in Jerusalem if you're from Nablus, because isn't there military control over the movement of Palestinians? You just can't get in the car and go.
Yeah.
You have to seek a permit.
Yeah.
Is that right? Could you explain how that control of movement of people works?
Okay, so even if we get the permit, we can't drive our cars to Israel. So we usually pass by the checkpoints and then take like transportation. So it's a long also process. Again, it's very hard to get it. You need like specific reason, like health or going to hospital or getting treatment.
Talking about peace is not unacceptable.
Yeah, or even tourism.
No, I'm serious. Like, it sounds funny, but yeah.
Unfortunately.
I wanted to mention the fact that, I mean, if you want to talk about this, but how it's perceived back home, like what we're doing. Because it's a different story in the Israeli and Palestinian side. So for me, I mean, yeah, some people will look at me, you know, this, oh, what are you doing? Traitor, right? Okay, whatever. But for Palestinians, it's a different story. Like, there are consequences to talking to Israelis.
Yeah, so it depends on the region, of course. If the people are from Gaza Strip, which is under the control of Hamas, it's harder because, as she said, they will be considered betrayal. So. But in the West Bank is a bit more flexible, but still not very acceptable by some people because everywhere you find extremists and, you know, like left wing. So there is risk, there is still risk. But I think many of us have the willing to do it because we are sick of this situation. We want to find a solution. And personally, I used to speak to my students about our rights because they're not really aware that we have rights we should ask for, more than like a piece of land we're fighting over. So I talk more about freedom of movement, kids in jails, in the Israeli jails who are under the age of 18. So it's more like we should seek our rights more than like the piece of land we like want to cut in pieces.
I have kind of a two-part question. It has to do with, I guess the first part is your ability to talk to policymakers here in DC. What kind of access or how do you make arrangements for that? And then what Hala said just a minute ago about Hamas control of the Gaza Strip. There's a young man in your program, Khaled Al-Ustad, who came here from Gaza, and he's staying with a friend of mine. But he tried to come, I think last year or before. He's had great difficulty coming here. And so the second part of my question is what ability do, I know it's not you interns, but maybe Paul, or is there any avenue for talking to like Hamas leadership in Gaza about the work that you're doing in a way that might make them, I know this sounds like pie in the sky, but that might make them more understanding of the work that NSL does and more willing to let people like Khaled come to the U.S. and participate in this kind of program. Thank you.
What was the first one?
Oh, it was the Policymakers, right? The first one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Okay, so the thing with policymakers and people in on the Hill, Senate, White House, God forbid, it is very, very difficult. And even if we get to talk to people, it's usually, okay, we say something, they nod, and go on with their lives. But we don't, bug them enough, because we should do it more. We tried to do it. Last year, I don't know if you're familiar with AIPAC. Probably you are. Okay. So, and it's not like on our agenda to go and talk to AIPAC, but we organized a meeting with them because it is extremely interesting, and we want to know how they operate, right? So we did that, and it was just one meeting, but it was a huge deal for us, and we kind of realized that, okay, we can't really talk only to the Democrats or only to peace organizations. We have to talk to everyone. It's very hard. I can't say that, oh, we're successful in doing that, but it is the plan, to kind of talk to more people, spread the word. At this point, it's just like talking and sometimes trying to get work placements in their offices, but we hope to do more in the future as it grows.
Yeah, because I think maybe they don't know that we have the desire, so we trying to show them that we have the desire to finish this or like find solution for that. So we are a good example of the result of NSL, like me and Anna working here, trying to build an organization. I think it's a big deal for anyone. And for Hamas, I'm not sure, because it's so different than the West Bank, but I feel that more like Fatah, who is controlling the West Bank, is more like liberal to accept such ideas, Hamas, I think it's a bit crazy. If they accept it, I would be very happy, but I don't know if they will.
I have to say, from my perspective, I think there's no chance in hell, none whatsoever. And if I would say that, from what I understand, right? I don't want to hijack the conversation, but in the West Bank, it's tricky too, because there's the issue of normalization. I don't know if you're familiar with the term. Do you want to explain? You're probably better.
It's just like getting Palestinians and Israelis on the same table and accepting them. It means for Palestinians that you are accepting their existence and accepting everything they're doing to you.
Yeah, so you're, as a Palestinian, you're not supposed to interact with Israelis under any circumstances, apart from, even, you can do it if it's about water or specifics like army, military control, things like that. Yes, you can because you have to. But other than that, nothing. You should never speak to the occupier. You should never, nothing. And it's not a normative statement. I'm just trying to explain how it works there. And you're perceived, it's more than perceived as a traitor, because this is a situation that's happening in Israel. You're perceived as a traitor, but there's no real consequences. But there are real consequences in the West Bank. That's what I'm trying to kind of show, that even if you want to, you have to hide it, or you have to, and it's crazy.
It's a complicated situation. So, yeah. And I was born in Haifa, and yeah. I moved to the U.S. when I was 19. My question to you guys is, so I noticed that you're highly progressive and aware of the Palestinian plight, and just the way that you guys described the conflict was, in many ways, you guys are talking about it like you're on the same page, right, in terms of your understanding of what's happening there. And what I'm curious about is, from your experience with New Story leadership, what happens when Palestinians and Israelis come together and the humanization is there, but there isn't agreement over what the facts on the ground are? What happens with that? Anyway, I'm just curious.
So yeah, we had conversations like that. And I remember one time talking to an Israeli guy. We were discussing the settlements I just showed you. And I told him any future agreement will include these people in the Israeli borders, right? So he was like, no, you keep them. Like, what? Why shall we keep them? He's like, no, we don't want them. So there is fundamental disagreement between even the Israelis. Also the Palestinians, but not that much. We used to discuss it. It wasn't like a big conflict.
I think, well, you're talking also about facts, like we are not on the same page about facts. And that is true because on both sides there is a lot of propaganda, and Israelis like to say that, oh, those Palestinians, they have crazy propaganda. They
Arabs.
teach their kids to, yeah, they say Arabs,
They say
because
Arabs,
Palestinians
yeah.
are not,
Do not
whatever.
exist.
So, yeah, so they say they have propaganda, they teach their kids to hate Jews, all that. There's propaganda on the Israeli side as well. I mean, come on, when we study history, we learn about all the wars, and the War of Independence, no one mentions all the refugees, ever. I learned about that when I read a history book that is not taught in school. And right now, the government is more right-wing than ever, and the Minister of Education is like super right-wing religious guy. He's changing the curriculum even more to the right. So the fact thing is a huge issue, and I think on the Palestinian side as well. I mean, and then what I wanted to say a lot of times, and on the Israeli side, when we have conversations between Israelis, and I would say, and I would use the term occupation, which is a loaded term. It's not a descriptive term, it's loaded. So when I say occupation, someone would tell me, oh, it's just your opinion. No, it's not an opinion, it's a fact. And this juggling between facts and opinions, it's really important to understand which is which. And I think if it happens on the Israeli side between Israelis, it definitely happens between Israelis and Palestinians.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of misunderstandings and like small things we argue, not small, big and small things we argue about. But you know, if we don't talk, it never kind of comes up.
Yeah.
We don't know where the misunderstanding is. So, I mean, we talk more, we understand more, I guess. I don't know if that's a good answer to your question, but it's a question, yeah.
Earl O'Donnell. Just changing the focus a little bit on this, host families. What are your expectations? What's the role of the host family? Anyone who wants to answer it? And what's the process if one wanted to be one?
It starts with someone volunteering. I'll be honest with you. If someone says, we want to host, we say, great, let us talk to you about this. We do a home visit. We want to make sure that anyone we take on as a host family can actually do this in a way that's good for our fellows. But the obligations of the host family are essentially to bring our fellows into your home and treat them the way you would treat any other family member. They are very busy. I will make this clear from the start. They're 20-somethings, and when they're not busy with the program, they're busy with each other, and I might add with the fellows in our sister programs, which is the Washington Ireland program and the South Africa Washington International program. We are a direct descendant of those two through Paul Costello, who was very involved with both of them before he started NSL with me. So they're not around. We, at a minimum, ask that you provide them with a key, teach them your house rules, have breakfast food around for them, have dinner if they happen to come home, lunch food now, because lunches have gotten so expensive, and we can't give them much in the way of pocket money, and they can't bring very much. So it's very basic stuff. Transportation, we try very hard to get host families who are near the red line in particular, because our office space and our meeting space is in Tacoma Park at Seekers, right off the red line, right across the street from the Tacoma Park stop.
This is great.
This area is great. Otherwise, host families turn themselves inside out, in my experience, and if they're pretty far from the proper metro, then they drive their students there. They make it a point. Harder in the evening when they come home. But it's really just being a family to them, and I think they can speak to how well that works, or poorly.
Works very well.
Yeah.
I think we have time for just one more question.
I know that there's no substitute for face-to-face, especially if
if there is any sort of suspicion on one side or the other. But I'm curious about what does happen these days electronically. And does any of that work positively, or does it end up being negative? Is that censored activity? Any enlightenment you could throw on that? Thank you.
Like social media. So I can say, from my perspective, that it's an interesting question. So I take your question to the social media side of things, I guess. Because, so in Israel, what's scary is that the conflict distorts social media. And from what I understand from Palestinians, and Hala will say more, but on the Palestinian side, they use social media to kind of unite and around the cause and kind of say, okay, nonviolent, like nonviolent activism, things like that, or like more information. But on the Israeli side, often, I will not say all the time, but often it goes to the fake news thing. And it was a term before, Trump started using it incorrectly. Yeah. But in Israel, a lot of times there is a footage, like a video, a photo, something like that, and then it's completely distorted by comments. And that is scary. I don't know if you know, just a quick example, the story was the soldier, like a year ago. I don't know. So there was a soldier in the West Bank who shot a Palestinian guy. Yeah, and there is a video of it, like a Palestinian guy filmed it. And then it went to social media. And then Israelis started saying, oh, he shot him because this Palestinian guy had like a bomb on him or something like that. But you can see in the video that there's nothing there. Also, if you want to go there, right, if you're a soldier, you're instructed not to shoot someone with an explosive on them if you're that close. So it doesn't make any sense on like any level, but it goes through social media and it became a huge story. So many Israelis said, oh my God, he had this bomb on him. And they believe it. And they believe it because they prefer to believe that than to believe that someone shot a human being point blank. So but I wouldn't say it's not 100% of the time, but I'm saying it's a big trend. And I feel like that's the difference between Israelis and Palestinians in social media, but I obviously am not an expert on Palestinian social media, so maybe you can say more about that.
So you mean the Palestinian social media on like how perceived?
So actually, social media, yes. What about video conferencing? In other words, it's not public. It's
right.
It's by prior agreement between sets of individuals as a way of continuing communication.
Between both sides, yeah. So we tried this actually, but again, because you can't do the whole job online. We can start it. We started like groups on Facebook and like that, but people, because they don't get to see each other, they give up on that. And we live so close to each other. It's ironic. Like 30 minutes, I'll be in Jerusalem. So that's why we prefer to start here at least, and maybe take this back home. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we have to wrap it up, but I want very much to thank both of you because by your presence here and by your comments, you've illustrated the power of this program. And we thank you so much for doing that for us today and doing it so well. And I'd also like to say that Joyce, please come up. Joyce will stay for anyone who has further questions, and the girls will be here too.
And also, please take some information. We have brochures here.
And we hope to see New Story Leadership back at St. John's in some form or fashion again. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.